What's up, YouTube? I've got Ben Greenfield. He's a pro athlete and he's running Spartan Race tomorrow. We're going to talk about the shocking truth about veganism and his opinion. Going to talk about both sides of the argument. Let me go live. You're watching, this is going to be for my podcast. You're watching behind the scenes. So let's go here on Facebook. What's up, Facebook? All right. I'm here with Ben Greenfield. You got to move this phone more. That way it's blocking the camera lens. We're going to be talking about shocking truths about veganism with health expert, author, best-selling author, and Spartan race winner, Ben Greenfield. We'll talk about both sides of the story. Should you be eating meat or not? All right.
Should I be eating this quesadilla?
Did you need me to slate?
Let's do this Instagram live. Ready, Ben?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be giving away money. I'm gonna give away an iPhone 7 at the end to one lucky listener.
iPhone.
No, not your brand new.
Okay.
Here we go, Instagram. What's up, Instagram? I'm here with Ben Greenfield, pro athlete, former winner of Spartan Race. He's doing Spartan Race tomorrow. We're gonna talk about the truth about veganism. We're gonna talk about both sides. So if you're a vegan, listen. If you're not vegan, also listen. I'm giving away an iPhone 7. Might give away an Apple Watch too. I'm going to give away some cash. Pay attention. One lucky person at the end is going to win iPhone 7. We got Zach here. So you're behind the scenes on my podcast, by the way. If you're wondering what this is for, this is my podcast. So let's just jump right into this. Oh, let me do an intro for my podcast. Did we slate?
Yeah, we just slated.
Okay, here we go. Okay, welcome to today's podcast. Tai Lopez here, Zach Cookman here, and special guest Ben Greenfield, best-selling author. You got a big one of the big podcasts out there about health. Spartan Race winner, and he's also doing the Spartan Race tomorrow.
It's not a big podcast, just an old podcast.
You got one of the original podcasts. But he's going to be talking about both sides of the story on veganism versus eating meat. One of my first businesses was the food business, so I've actually traveled to over 40 countries studying agriculture and food. My first mentor was Joel Salatin, who has been one of the voices for sustainable agriculture, organic agriculture for the last, his family started a famous farm called Polyface Farm in Virginia in the 1960s. So he's been going about 60 years in the food business. So let's start with let's just start by just saying. Now, I want to just preface this podcast. There's a very interesting book everybody here should buy. I'm going to pull it up on my iBooks. If you're listening in, I will give you the name. The name of the book is Diet Cults. Diet Cults. This is, people always ask me for advice on books. Let me show you, those of you watching live, here's the cover of this book. Diet Cults, it's a little hard to see here, by Matt Fitzgerald. The Surprising Fallacy at the Core of Nutrition Fads. Diet Cults by Matt Fitzgerald. Buy that book.
Matt. He's been on my podcast.
Really?
Yeah, he's an endurance athlete guy. I ran into him when I was racing Ironman.
You've done Ironman. How many times have you done Ironman?
13 times.
13? Have you won
Too many
Ironman?
times.
Have you ever won it?
I've never won an Ironman.
No. Is that one tough?
That's a hard race to win. You got to dedicate your life to winning one of those.
And Spartan, what year did you win the Spartan race?
2000 and what is it? 2017, 2016.
Nice.
Early 2016.
So the question is, someone said Javi Torres says Matt Fitzgerald is a great writer. Ben Greenfield has an awesome book. We don't have a copy of it here.
You should. What's wrong with you?
It's Beyond Fitness.
Beyond Training.
Beyond Training.
There's actually a brand new edition just out.
Awesome.
Added about 40 pages of extra content, extra biohacking content to it.
Yes or no?
Joel Salatin's got a good new book out too, The Pigness of Pigs.
The Pigness of
Pigs. I just had him on my show.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
On the phone, or did he come out in person?
No, on Skype.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. In your opinion, veganism, thumbs up or thumbs down?
You asking me that?
Your opinion, Ben Greenfield.
My opinion on veganism is a little bit complex, but it starts with this. It depends on you. I know it's an annoying way to respond, but it depends on a few factors. Let's say, for example, let's take ketosis, right? Everybody's into ketosis a lot these days. This whole high-fat diet where you're drinking coconut oil and butter and eating fatty beef and shoving coconut manna and olives and olive oil into your mouth. And the idea is that there's a certain portion of the population that has what's called familial hypercholesteremia. When they consume those kind of fats, they get very, very high cholesterol. And high cholesterol isn't bad, but in this case, they get high levels of oxidized cholesterol, very small particles that tend to weasel their way into your vascular walls and create things like arteriosclerosis. And for these people, doing something like a high-fat or a meat-rich diet is not such a great idea. They do really, really well on a high-fiber, more veganistic diet, what we would call a Katavan diet, like an islander-based diet with a lot of fiber and small amounts of fish, but really not this whole like meat and eggs and oil approach. So that's one population for which veganism would be a decent choice as far as a diet goes. There are some holes that you need to fill in, which I'll get to in a moment.
Now, let me interrupt you for 1 second.
Go ahead.
So, basically, the idea is that in the past, diets have been very blanket. Like, so the U.S. government has come out with blanket nutritional advice. Everybody should basically get 2 pieces of fruit, 2 pieces of this, bread at the bottom. You know, they have the food triangle. Now, in the modern world, you get even more opinions. You got vegans, you got vegetarians, you have pescatarians, you have fruitarians, you have people that are going for the zone diet. I mean, there's everything. But what you're saying is, and this is kind of my opinion, the future is going to be customized diet.
Future is self-quantification. What would it cost you thousands and thousands of dollars at the freaking Princeton Longevity Institute a decade ago? You can now get for, almost pennies on the dollar, right? A 23andMe genetic test or a blood test that would have been $10,000 you can get for like $400 now. You can find out not only what your genes are, not only where your ancestors came from and what they would have eaten, but also holes in your blood or your urine or your saliva, meaning low vitamin D or low vitamin K or thyroid deficiencies or things that are all going to influence not just how you eat, but also how you supplement. And one of those things that I just alluded to would be a genetic test to find out if you tend to be a cholesterol storer.
How would you know that? Was that a DNA marker?
Yeah, it's a DNA marker. So you get like a 23andMe genetic analysis, and then there's a really cool website called 23andYou, 23andYou.com. And you go there and you can have access to all these different websites that you can run all your genetic data through to actually get all the health stuff that a lot of times 23andMe isn't releasing to you.
Yeah, they don't. They kind of got either sued or shut down.
Yeah.
Why are you not vegan? In your DNA, your body, what is the problem for you found?
Right, so there's a few other issues. First of all, veganism is great if you're trying to clean up shop, right? Like, so if you've been eating a very crappy diet and you need a lot of antioxidants, a lot of flavonols, a lot of polyphenols, a lot of plant-rich fibers, a lot of chlorophyll, a lot of dark leafy matter, what that does is it cleans you out. And that's why a lot of people feel like $1 million for a month or 2 months or 6 months after they begin to consume a diet that's comprised primarily of plants and that eliminates a lot of either acidic foods or acid producing foods like
processed
meats
stuff.
and coffee and dairies and things along those lines, or the consumption of those foods in their processed, Americanized format, right? Like foods with not only trans fats added to them, but vegetable oils added to them, foods that have been cooked at high temperatures, foods that have been oxidized and processed. And so once you switch to veganism, a lot of times you're just not eating those foods, so you feel a lot better.
Right.
Now,
so it's not just the veganism, it's that you're cutting out junky food.
So you're cutting out junky food and you're replacing it with a lot of things that fight inflammation, like coconut oil, for example, right? Coconut oil actually isn't good for you at all. There's a real dark side to coconut oil. I have an article about this on my website about how coconut oil causes inflammation. Right? Everybody thinks it's healthy for you, but in the absence of fiber, coconut oil is bad for you.
Because it's processed.
It makes sense, because you can find coconut oil in a coconut. We call it coconut meat. And the fiber, and the idea is all these people putting coconut oil into their coffee in the morning, they're in many cases not including things like kale and spinach and dark leafy greens and wild plants and all these things that you should do. Like, my breakfast in the morning is I wander out into the forest behind my house and I gather nettle and wild mint and I swing by the garden and I'll get some cabbage and some kale and some bok choy and some Swiss chard, cilantro, parsley, herbs, wild plants. I throw all this in a blender and I blend it up with fats, or like coconut milk and coconut oil and stuff. So my breakfast is just like plants and
so
fats.
it's like a nasty shake.
It tastes amazing once you add enough stevia to it. And
so you put stevia.
Well, no, I blend it like
Natural
pudding, and then I'll add like cacao nibs and some coconut flakes.
So a little
goji
chocolate
berries.
and it's raw.
Yeah, a little bit to it.
Zach? So we got Zach over here.
I thought it sounded a bit like a Disney scene, a Disney cartoon going out in the
Frolicking.
Yeah.
And Bambi
Whistling
helps
with the
me.
basket.
Right, frolicking nude through a pastoral field. So the idea.
Wait, let
though,
me ask real quick, not to interrupt your train of thought, but hold that for 1 second. So Zach is the third opinion here. Zach is from the South. He is representing the part of the conversation that has found real health in Bojangles, Hardee's, and moon pies. So Zach, can you explain to us about that?
The evidence, it's not so much that I think that it's better as much as I think it doesn't matter. You can still eat that and live just the same, because in the end everyone dies. So that's my evidence that it doesn't matter. We're all going to die. It's not as though people have figured out eating healthy lets you live.
I just don't want to
forever.
live the last half of my life in a wheelchair and a diaper.
Zach doesn't mind that.
Yeah,
Zach doesn't mind diapers.
you're going to have to scare me a little bit.
You know what
differently.
is kind of funny though about what you say is there's a lot of centenarians that we find in many of these blue zones, and many of them do drink a lot and smoke a lot, and they don't exercise.
Yep.
But they've got relationships and love and family.
Right.
So you can do a lot when you have like relationships, love, family, positive emotions, gratitude. It's pretty amazing.
All I need is a
That's a
Cajun
defining
filet biscuit
characteristic.
combo and a good woman.
Right. Exactly.
When I lived in North Carolina, we moved to North Carolina, and California is where I was before, and everyone is pretty healthy. And we moved to this to Clayton, North Carolina. It was kind of the countryside. We lived in a mobile home, and across about a mile away, my stepdad met this woman named Mrs. Creech, and we would go over
Sounds
there.
pleasant.
Yeah, Mrs. Creech. We'd go over there. She was 90, I think 99 or 96 or something, and she had a little mini farm. And so every day she'd go out, she'd milk her goats. She had a little garden, and she would eat moon pies. If you don't know what a moon pie is,
Google
it's
that.
literally chocolate with marshmallow. And she said she hasn't eaten a vegetable for 50 years, and she smoked. And she's like, and this lady was like, but she had other stuff.
She's in her goat milk.
She was
though.
on her goat milk.
That's what we have. We have 7 Nigerian dwarf goats now. We milk them every morning.
So there isn't a basic.
Can you milk
like,
me, fucker?
the-
What is that from?
What?
Meet the
What did you
Fucker.
just say?
Meet the fuckers.
parents.
Oh yeah.
Meet
I
the
have
parents.
nipples, Greg.
I got
Yeah,
nipples.
nipples.
Can you
Did you
milk
milk
me?
me?
That's
Is
a
there-
line. I wasn't actually asking. Ben.
Is there an overall kind of diet that no matter what, like you're saying, it's going to move towards being
yeah.
very specific, but is there kind of a generic one that no matter what, if
Yeah, I've got a thought on that. So I'll return to that in just a second. What I think would be like a coverall diet if you're just going to kind of like play the lottery and hope you pick the right diet, because there is one that if you live in America would probably work pretty well for you based on most people's ancestry in America. But this idea of veganism, feeling really good when you get on a vegan diet, the problem is 1 year down the road or 2 years down the road or 5 years down the road, there are holes that will wind up. If you test your blood and your biomarkers, or if you test anything that's going on inside your body, there are specific nutrients that over and over again wind up missing from the diets of most people eating a plant-based diet.
What are
Now,
those?
there are people that do things the right way. People who soak their food, who sprout their grains, who ferment their beans, who actually activate a lot of the nutrients that you find in foods when you do veganism, what would be considered the hard way. Right? It's a lot easier to eat meat and drink milk to get a lot of these things. But if you did want to go completely animal free, you can work in a lot of these old ancestral ways of preparing your grains and your beans and your plants in ways that deactivate the plant's natural defense mechanisms. There's a great new book about this called The Plant Paradox by Stephen Gundry, where he goes into how plants have these built-in natural defense mechanisms that can be deactivated when you soak and you sprout.
Like tomatoes are nightshade family. They
ferment.
kill you.
Right.
Potatoes.
Right, but you can pressure cook a potato and peel it and make it an amazing nourishing food. But a lot of people don't go out of their way to do that, right? Because it's laborious. It takes time. So what you tend to see is certain deficiencies creep up. DHA, incredibly important for your brain and your neural tissue. That tends to be deficient in many people eating a plant-based diet unless they're consuming lots of algae. Spirulina and chlorella actually gives you that DHA, but a lot of people who are following a plant-based diet don't eat that. Another example would be taurine. Another example would be creatine. I tell everybody on a vegan or a plant-based diet to have 5 grams of creatine a day.
Creatine you get naturally in cows.
Right,
Beef.
Right, beef, exactly.
That's what
You
builds
don't find
muscles.
it. You don't find it in plants that often. Vitamin D and vitamin K are 2 fat-soluble vitamins we find in dense amounts in a lot of animal foods and animal fats, but you can get some in mushrooms. You can get some in like a fermented soybean derivative called natto. But again, it's very difficult to hunt down some of these things. And so in many cases for a vegan, I recommend supplementing with the vitamin D, vitamin K, taurine, creatine, DHA. Another one that's notoriously deficient is amino acids.
Yeah.
Because again, unless you're soaking and sprouting and fermenting and getting a good mix of proteins, pea protein, hemp protein, rice protein, what happens is you tend to get amino acid deficiencies.
So if you're just
There's
stuck
even-
on one diet,
Right.
eating certain beans all the time, you're not getting
Right.
that.
So you want to use what research has found is that when you combine a digestive enzyme complex with a plant-based protein powder like hemp or pea or rice, you actually render that protein just as high as like a whey protein or an egg protein when it comes to amino acid bioavailability, right? So what you can do to hack your vegan diet is you can have like protein powder along with digestive enzymes with like a smoothie in the morning, for example. So there are ways that you can skirt a lot of these issues. It's just that like 90% of people who follow a vegan diet don't really do that. And so
Yeah.
and
So
so
people don't have
unless you cover
time in
bases-
the modern world.
Yeah, it's time.
Most people.
Yeah, it's so what I do is I'm a big fan of having certain periods of time, as we see in a lot of long-lived cultures, you know, the Orthodox Church and the Mediterranean diet, and we see this all the time, certain periods of time where you're abstaining from large amounts of meat, where you're abstaining from large amounts of protein, because protein activates something called the mTOR pathway, which can accelerate aging. So it can be not only a longevity, but also a detoxification strategy to have certain periods of the year where you go without meat and you do more plants. You might even do more green juices. I'm not a big fan of, as we were talking about before we started recording, like fruit juices, because they mainline fructose into the bloodstream. But, you know, juices like, you know, kale juices and celery and turmeric and carrot and things along those lines. So having certain times of the year when you don't eat meat is good, but as in terms of a long-term sustainable diet that doesn't build up deficiencies in the body, unless you're really going out of your way to prepare food the proper way, veganism is not a great solution for long-term health and longevity. Instead, a plant-rich diet with low to moderate amounts of fish and eggs and meat, all from organic, sustainable sources, is a much, much better way to go because it allows you to get your nutrients far more easily. And then to return to your question, Zach, about like what diet would actually work well if you just had to guess. There's some really interesting books about this. One is called The Perfect Health Diet by an astrophysicist named Paul Jaminet. There's another kind of like diet group called the Weston A. Price Foundation
Weston
that puts
A.
out
Price.
pretty good information about this. And it turns out when you look at a lot of these diets that tend to be compatible with the great majority of the population, kind of like following that 80-20 approach, it comes out to about 50 to 60% fat from really good healthy fat sources, including plant sources, 20 to 30% protein, and then finally, depending on the day's level of physical activity, anywhere from 10 to 30% carbohydrate.
So that's a pretty higher fat
amount of the carbohydrate coming on the hard days. But remember, fat is twice as calorically dense as protein, so it still would only take up like a third of your plate, right?
Right.
And
So
we're
it's
talking
not-
about avocados, butter, oil. I mean, those freaking quesadillas, those are probably 60% fat.
Check out
That's
these
sitting right
quesadillas.
there. That looks like a carb bomb, but that's like 60% because it's filet mignon, it's cheese,
I'm
it's
gonna try it.
oil.
What
And
kind of
so-
cheese? Sheep.
I
I
don't
did
know
a
what kind of
food
cheese.
allergy test. I've done a few. I've done the one. What's the one I did recently? I've done 3 different ones, and it's interesting. That's another thing to bring up.
Yeah,
some of my
there's only one accurate food allergy test.
Which is the one?
Cyrex.
Yeah, I did Cyrex. I've done the other one that's not, didn't seem as good. But
Yeah.
you know the interesting thing was Cyrex. And I'll tell you this, listen to your body. Because every food I don't really like, my Cyrex showed that I'm somewhat allergic to it. Like,
Crazy.
I don't love potatoes.
Yeah.
I never have. I don't love chicken as much. And chicken, I'm moderately allergic. I love beef. So some things, if you can revert your brain to the natural state, and not bombard it with processed food, which messes up your taste buds. But if you're eating regular food and you listen to your taste bud, I hate, you know the craziest thing in Cyrex, I don't like cooked tomatoes, but I like raw tomatoes. And literally it said I'm allergic to cooked tomatoes,
Yeah.
but not raw.
Yeah, it's crazy. Now, there is one other test, brand new test called Viome. It's a complete analysis of your entire gut microbiome. And I've done that test, and it's compared to Cyrex, very comparable in terms of actually looking at your gut bacteria and what they can and cannot digest. So that's kind of a newer test. It's not even available to a lot of people, I don't think, right now. But you can go to, I think it's MyViome or Viome or Google
VIOM?
VIOME. It's run by a billionaire, like a billionaire philanthropist, inventor, entrepreneur named Naveen Jain. I'm flying over to see him in
Oh
Seattle
yeah,
next
that guy's
weekend.
famous. Naveen
Yeah.
Jain, yeah.
Yeah.
He's up
So
in Silicon Valley,
owns
isn't he?
Viome. No, he's in Bellevue. I'm gonna
Bellevue?
go up there and podcast with him next week. Anyways, though, so that's kind of the deal with veganism. Is it's good as a sometimes diet, and it's even fine as a sustainable diet for life if you're willing to put in a lot of hard work. But for me, and don't get me wrong, like I hunt all my own meat. I only eat stuff that I've personally harvested, including animals, or know where it's been harvested. I grow all my own plants and all my own vegetables and 8 raised garden beds at home. I have goats, I have chickens. So I'm very, very careful about the source of the meat, the source of the eggs, the source of the dairy, and that's very important. If I didn't know, and I do this a lot when I travel, I just don't eat meat, right? I only eat plants when I travel if I don't know where the eggs are coming from, the dairy, because
let me get
bad animal sources, they're worse for you than bad plant sources.
Yoga with Amy on YouTube says, Ben, please stop making veganism sound hard. What's your response?
You know what? It is hard to do it right. It is. I mean, because we do a lot of soaking and sprouting and fermenting and slow food prepping. For the average person who I think is living a more fast-paced lifestyle than human beings are even meant to live, it's hard to go out of your way and freaking, take your head of cabbage and get your whey and get your salt and get your big pan and chop that all up and let it sit overnight at room temperature and ferment it and make your own kimchi or sauerkraut, or just take soybeans rather than just like eating the soybeans as edamame, to get like a natto starter and to ferment that on the counter and to make it and then keep it in the fridge. Like, a lot of people just aren't doing a lot of these things. Even quinoa, like not even many people will soak or rinse or sprout something like quinoa, which is a horrible digestive irritant unless you treat it properly. So I'm not against veganism at all. I'm about doing it the right way if you're going to do it. And it's so much more convenient to work in meats and milks and dairy and eggs and fish here and there to cover those bases, especially if you're a busy person.
Now, I'll tell you, there's a couple things that I think in life you have to learn. One of the big problems in the world is people don't know how to think. And so what happens is every opinion now, because of the ease of the internet and the fact that people are good bullshitters, any position you take, you like Donald Trump, you don't like Donald Trump. You like veganism, you don't like veganism. You can find an argument for it. So you got to learn to think for yourself. And here's what I do. I'm a practical person. I've been around the world. I've been to over 50 countries. I've been to basically every continent. And I look at people and I see what their diet's been in that country for the last 100 years. When I see places that eat milk and meat, they don't look that bad to me. Look, in fact, in Africa, the Maasai African tribe, who are cow farmers, they've always produced the biggest, strongest people. Half of the freaking NBA, if you watch basketball, if you test, these guys are coming from tribes like the Maasai, the average Maasai person,
on milk and blood,
and they tap the neck of a cow and drink the blood. They basically have very little vegetables. If you go to Asia and you look at the plant-based parts of Asia,
doesn't kill the cow, by the way.
No, it doesn't kill. It's just a little tap. But if you go to Asia, who are the biggest Asians? Koreans. You go South Koreans are big. Their guys are 6 foot 220. You go to Vietnam, where they just eat rice, and they're 4 foot 2 or 4 foot 11. Yeah. If you go to Europe, if you go to Holland right now, the Dutch people. Now, some people will argue this is just because of prenatal supplementation, but no, they are now the tallest white people in the world. The average Dutch person is 6 foot 2, and the average Dutch woman's 5 foot 8. And height in general, like that, is a sign of health. Not always. Some of it's your phenotype. It's called your body phenotype. So if you're from countries close to the equator, usually are shorter. But and that's the same with deer and all animals. But the point being, there's not overwhelming evidence. Even though people will bring up some vegetarian places like Okinawa, but Okinawa is not 100%. But Okinawans eat fish.
Fish, eggs.
They have fish and eggs. They're not vegan. They're more vegetarian, closer to vegetarian.
Right.
Wouldn't you say?
Right. And we could even argue there, you do see higher amounts of, for example, breast cancer due to very, very high intake of soy. So, I mean, there are some populations that still don't have it completely figured out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. What else you want to talk about? You said
Yeah, let's talk.
supplements. I got. How long do I have before I got to hit the?
You can go whenever you got.
All right,
Whenever
dude,
he's got to run.
Let's jam.
Okay.
Let's do rapid fire Q&A.
Rapid fire.
5
minutes. Number one.
I gotta be up at the butt crack
Here,
of dawn to go.
have
race
Rome.
smart.
Rome can come in and be on here. I saw him just come in. Number one.
Okay.
Fat loss. What's a obviously diet and exercise are more important, but what supplements
loss,
work
yeah.
for fat
Okay.
loss?
Here's the deal. Just about every single supplement company out there has it wrong when it comes to fat loss. And
Okay.
here's why. They're doing ephedra and Advantra and green tea and cayenne and all manner of central nervous system stimulants to jack up the metabolism, which works, but which is horrible for your central nervous system, for your sleep, for your recovery. It's very taxing on your
It's like doing
adrenals.
cocaine.
Exactly. When in fact, the secret to fat loss is to A, not have your blood sugar levels rise throughout the day, and B, have no period of time during the day when those blood sugar levels get jacked up. So we're talking about constant blood sugar levels with not any frequent spikes in blood sugar levels.
Okay.
Okay, so constantly low,
Okay.
specifically. So what can do that? Let me give you 3 examples. Consuming the equivalent of 2 teaspoons of Ceylon cinnamon per day can lower your blood glucose and keep your blood
Ceylon
glucose
cinnamon. That's
Ceylon.
a specific
Gotta be
type of
Ceylon.
cinnamon?
Ceylon.
Okay.
What I did just before, Zach and I were in the kitchen, and I was mixing up a little bit of apple cider vinegar and kombucha. Apple cider vinegar before a meal, right? Before I ate that quesadilla, for example, it lowers what is called your postprandial blood glucose. Again, keeps the glucose from staying elevated for long periods of time in the bloodstream, which can lead to inflammation and can lead to that glucose getting partitioned into fat tissue. Another example would be something, speaking of Okinawa, that you see consumed in large quantities over there. It's something I use every day, bitter melon extract. Okay, any of these kind of like bitter tasting foods that tend to be digestives also tend to lower your blood glucose or keep your blood glucose stable. Right, so I do a comprehensive blood test about every 3 months, and my fasted glucose is in the 70s.
Wow,
my
you're in the 70s?
hemoglobin A1C, which is a
Jeez.
3-month
Yeah, that's
snapshot
your
of your fasted glucose levels. Mine is at about, I want to say it's like 4.4, 4.5. It's very low.
Mine's at about
So-
5.
Yeah,
So my glucose is like 94.
And by the way, even on a very low sugar diet, there is one thing that can drive glucose up, and that's cortisol.
Stress.
Hypercortisolism causes your liver to dump its glycogen and bring blood glucose up. But the trick is, for any supplement that's going to be a fat loss supplement, in my opinion, it shouldn't be doing that by jacking up your central nervous system activity or your metabolism, but by instead controlling your blood sugar.
Could it literally be water with this cinnamon in it?
You could take water, you could add cinnamon. There are other things, minerals like chromium and vanadium. Those also help to stabilize your blood sugar levels. You could add a little bit of like a bitter melon type of extract to a water, and you could sweeten it with like an organic stevia to take some of the bitterness away.
Okay.
And you could even do like a little bit of like some kind of like a vinegar in there.
Do you think that would have a noticeable effect on somebody? Fat loss?
Oh,
If
absolutely.
they were drinking this water?
You could take a blood glucose monitor from your local pharmacy, and you could test your blood glucose before and after, and you'd notice a distinct drop in blood glucose after a meal compared to not having consumed something like that. So.
All right, speed round. We'll do 2 more questions, and
All right.
then you got to go to bed. Number 2, and this is going to be a question for Zach. I mean, based on what Zach said. For a person who doesn't know where to start and are completely lost, what is a food that they can add to their diet that most people like, that's easy? Well, Bradley Martin, the bodybuilder, the famous Instagram bodybuilder friend of mine, and I said, what's the best diet in your experience? And he said, one that you can stick with. And so what's a diet for a beginner? Because I always believe you got to improve in phases. It's like you want to make $1 million, first try to make 10 grand a month, then try to make 100 grand a month later. So for somebody who's doing progressive steps, what is the easiest thing that most people like that they can make sure they're eating every day in the place of McDonald's and junk food? Is it a steak? Is it quesadillas? Is it what would you say?
Pistachios?
I would say if even though I hesitate to say this because it doesn't have much fiber in it, but it's very, very easy to mix with fiber and to mix with plants, and it goes well with just about any plant, from kale to cabbage to tomatoes and beyond. It would be nature's perfectly packaged protein that is also very, very dense in fat-soluble vitamins, and that would be the egg.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do one thing, like a good, healthy, organic egg from hens that haven't been, kept in in cages. But
The whole egg or just
cage
egg whites?
A whole egg. Definitely not the egg. The egg whites, that's a word. If I could throw out one part of the egg, it'd be the egg whites. So I have to choose one part. But the egg whites along with the egg yolk, that's the perfect 1-2 combo. Because the yolk balances out the dense amount of proteins and the albumin in the egg white. You've got vitamin K, you've got vitamin A, you've got vitamin D. It's satiating. And again, it doesn't have the fiber in it. Remember what I said earlier at the beginning of the podcast. If you're going to eat these fats, you need to have fibers along with them. But again, it's so easy to mix
So an egg salad,
mix
maybe.
eggs with veg. You could have egg salad. You could have eggs with some cilantro and parsley and kale for breakfast. You don't want to eat too many eggs. Obviously, there's a law.
What would you? 2 or 3?
You could eat 2 or 3 a day. Yeah. I mean,
Do you eat eggs, Zach?
my kids have a couple of eggs every morning.
Every morning for breakfast, I have the little poaching pan.
Yeah.
So I'll poach a couple and then I throw it on some greens.
But I'm gonna play.
Good eggs and cook them at low temperature. Eggs,
as a matter of
eggs are
fact,
not very heat stable.
I got a. They didn't
Zach
have
eats
the
them raw
eggs.
like Rocky, and then he pounds his
Actually,
chest.
I tried to do that as a kid. And my mom was like, "All right, if you want to." So she put it in the glass. I took a sip. She goes, "You can't sip it," because I didn't want to drink it anymore. But no, I bought a dozen eggs the other day. They didn't have the ones that I normally get at the grocery store, which are
Right. Better rate.
Yeah, it's the best stuff. And I cracked them open the next day, and they were so pale. The yellow yolk was so pale.
Oh, yeah.
Throw them out.
I did.
That's nasty.
Throw them out. I'm gonna tell you.
They didn't. Some of them they still dye. They still dye the eggs. They used to do this back in the day because housewives wanted their egg yolks to be a specific.
They put
color, so
lutein in
dye
it.
the egg yolks. Yeah, they don't even do that.
When I was, my first business was eggs, so I know a lot about it. I worked on a farm with 10,000 free-ranging chickens out on pasture. So a good egg, believe it or not, is this color. And it's orange.
It's that color. It's a color
literally.
you can't rely. Like when our hens lay, you'll come back with 10 eggs, and they're all sorts of different colors. But they're all that dark. They all have like
The
a
yolk,
dark tint to them.
not
They're
the outside.
Not white. Yeah, the yolk is that color.
The shell color comes from the breed of chickens. White Leghorn chickens lay white eggs, and Rhode Island Reds lay red. Okay, third question, so you can go to bed. Then we're gonna do a giveaway here. The absolute number one food you should cut out that even healthy people are still putting in their diet.
It's not sugar, because the thing is, your body can metabolize sugar. Your body starts metabolizing sugar as soon as it hits your mouth.
So sugar's not
Salivary
the number
glands.
one.
Sugar is not the number one. It's the one thing that your cells will use to make their membranes, and that your nerves will use to make the sheaths that line your nerves. And if it's using this compound to make those, then you are literally going to be what you eat. You're going to be comprised of a nasty form of a membrane precursor or a nerve precursor, and that would be any oil that's been oxidized or heated or pressurized. And when
So
you
what's
go
some
to
examples of that?
So a perfect example is canola oil. Perfect example. And granted, there are some couple like Whole Foods. They use like a cold expeller pressed canola oil. So a lot of people are like, I'm not going to eat the salad bar at Whole Foods because they drench their stuff with canola oil. That canola oil, they actually don't treat too badly. But when you go to the airport and you navigate to like the healthy food section of the newsstand at the airport, and you look at like all the the coconut flakes and the apple chips and the mangoes, and then you look at the label, almost every freaking thing has 2 ingredients added to it: sugar and some form of vegetable oil, safflower, sunflower, canola oil. And in most cases, unless it says like cold processed, expeller pressed canola oil or sunflower or safflower, vegetable oil is the worst thing that you can put into your body. The best book you could read about this to give you a really expansive treatise of why this is the case is called Deep Nutrition by Dr. Kate Shanahan. And it delves into this whole idea.
So butter? Is butter better, or what should people put instead?
So the oils you're going to find in my house will be really, really good, like dark, cloudy, greenish extra virgin olive oil, like a good extra virgin olive oil, right? Like I'm part of an olive oil club. So every few months I get a few
Zach wanted to be
bottles
in the olive oil club.
olive oil from Chile and Argentina. So olive oil is really good, but it's got to be real olive oil.
I had a
Even
crush on
5-star Napa Valley restaurants now
On
are
Popeye?
cutting their olive oil half and half with canola oil.
Okay.
Right, so you got to get the good olive oil. Avocado oil, very heat stable. Macadamia nut oil, very heat stable.
I have
and then like a
grapeseed oil,
good
is that-
grass-fed butter.
Should I
Grapeseed
cut that
oil
out?
is okay. It's not the best. It would be in
Zach,
most
cut
cases
it.
like an oxidized
Yeah,
pressurized.
it's out.
You got to
Yeah.
cut it. Hey, where's our sound effect maker?
I was with the giveaway. I was gonna.
So
I didn't wanna disrespect
avocado,
them.
macadamia nut, extra virgin olive oil, a little bit of butter, ghee's pretty good. Coconut oil is pretty good. Those are some of the biggies.
What about the stuff that people are putting butter in their coffee? That's okay?
Well, like I said earlier, in the absence of fiber, so I do a lot of blood work with CrossFitters and people, doing the whole butter coffee thing. So butter will give you butyric acid, which is good for your gut. And the fats and like the coconut oil and things you blend the coffee with, there's two psychoactive components of coffee, kaolol and cafestol. These are only carried across your blood-brain barrier when the coffee is A, blended with fats, and B, not filtered through a paper filter. Right? So if you're using a stainless steel filter or an AeroPress or a French press and you're blending it with fats, you actually do get more out of the coffee when it's blended with fats. But the problem is these people aren't going off at lunch and having like a big salad or a whole mess of roasted vegetables with dinner. They're having steak with dinner, eggs and bacon with fatty coffee for breakfast, and like, you know, sardines for lunch, right? And that's like a classic kind of like modern, quote, healthy paleo diet or CrossFitter diet, you know, what you see a lot of these folks doing. But the problem is you get oxidation of those fats, you don't get the fiber that allows them to be processed properly by the gut. So yeah, the butter in your coffee is okay, but at some point during the day you gotta do a lot of greens, you gotta do a lot of plants, and you have to include a lot of polyphenols and polyphenols.
Whether you're vegan or non-vegan, you need a ton of vegetables. And it's funny, I read every single diet book I could get my hand on. And there's only one thing everybody says, everybody from vegan to non-vegan, have some huge salads a few times a day. I mean, and from not just iceberg lettuce, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, old school bodybuilder, huge salads. Paleo people, still gotta have salad. Vegans obviously have salad. Only fruitarians are the only ones that say not much. One last question, and I'm gonna let you go. This is a super speed round. Just give me a minute.
In slow motion.
Let's talk on goji berries and antioxidants. I looked up the highest antioxidant foods. Goji berry is the highest fruit, and then there's some other ones. Herbs are the highest overall. Do you like goji berries?
I like goji berries, but I'm big into eating local. And so if you can find berries that are near you, they're even better. So like I have Oregon grapefruit that grows near my house. And you can dig up the root. It's amazing medicine. It's like bearberry that you pay like $60 for at the grocery store, or golden seal. But these roots are like this dark yellowish orange, and the berries are these tart, tiny berries. They aren't like these huge sweet berries we buy at the grocery store. They're actually the way that a berry should taste, right? Like kind of tart, kind of sour, really good for you though. So if you can find a local berry, there's not a really big difference behind like the antioxidant content of a goji berry versus a blackberry versus a blueberry versus an Oregon grapeberry. I like to pick stuff that I can find locally, like huckleberries, Oregon grapeberries, and wild raspberries, and some wild strawberries all grow native around me, right? So if I can find something close to the area, I like to go for that. But goji berries aren't bad. The only problem with goji berries is that nowadays in America, most of the time you find them dried.
Yeah.
And anytime you dry something,
right, you lose the antioxidants.
You lose a lot of the water content. You oxidize some of the antioxidants, but then you also wind up eating like 10 times more than nature meant you to eat. And anybody who's gone out and picked berries, you know this. There's thorns and your hands get covered in cuts. It's like you might eat like 20 berries before you're like, all right, screw this, I'm done. It's kind of like nuts, right? Like if you had to shell every nut that you ate, you wouldn't be eating handfuls and handfuls of nuts without thinking about it. So a big part of it comes down to stepping back and asking yourself, you know, how would my ancestors have treated this scenario? But ultimately, goji berries aren't bad.
Ben, thank you so much.
All right, dude.
Thanks for staying up. You got the Spartan race. Everybody wish him well. Zach will also be...
LA Dodger Stadium tomorrow morning.
Zach's going to be there.
7:30.
Zach, are you going to be running?
What's that?
Zach's going to be doing a Spartan race, a shortened version.
With me, dude.
Where he has to run up 3 stairs and then eat a moon pie.
With a sandbag.
The moon pie.
You gotta carry the moon pie up the stairs.
Moon pie is definitely the diet to go with for sure.
All right, guys.
Can't argue against.
Thanks, man.
Have fun. I'm going to bed.
Why doesn't Rome come over here?
99.
Maybe? Zach, why don't
Moon
you come
pie
here?
in the microwave.
Moon pie in the microwave.
Thanks for being. All right, we're gonna do a
right.
giveaway break while we prepare for the next podcast. Zach, why don't you come here?
Are you sure? This is a very comfortable.
Let Rome be there.
Why not here?
Why Rome? Rome knows nothing about vegan.
No, we're changing the subject.
Oh.
All right.
We're talking
podcast
politics
over.
and
Check it
money
out.
and
Subscribe to our live
business.
streams. It'll be about veganism.
Talking politics.
I'm taking a break.
You go to rest.
Tell us the shocking truth about veganism. Dimas, you're late, buddy.
What?
Sorry
All
to
right.
break it to
You'll
you.
be okay with the
These
levels.
guys are going to talk about
gonna sit there,
stuff that's far less scientific now.
Yeah.
Hi, fellas.
We're gonna talk about Zach's hat.
How to cut cocaine.
How to cut cocaine.
With goji berries.
I'm in love with the cocoa.
All right. We'll see you guys later on.
See you, man. Good luck tomorrow, Ben.
Hey, thanks, man. I'll be back later on.
These are good quesadillas. Is Thai pro? You know, I did veganism once. I didn't notice any difference at all, except I couldn't find food. I didn't feel better. I didn't feel worse. So, you know. Somebody said Chi-Chi got that yayo.
I think everything in moderation.
Even moderation in moderation?
Ben, yeah, you need to moderate your moderation.
Uh,
You know, you're a little intense with the moderating.
I think we should reset Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
To another one.
We're going to be back in a second for the giveaway.
Crossing.
Let's do a $100 giveaway right now. I'm going to PayPal somebody $100 who answers this question. Let's talk about whoever says this is going to go very fast. What is the number one thing Ben Greenfield recommends you cut out of your diet? Ready, set, go. $100. Number one thing. Not sugar. Be specific. Oh, there we go. 123B321 on YouTube. Canola oil. Congratulations, we got $100 for you. I'm gonna do some more. Let me do one more for another $100. What is the number one thing Ben recommends you should add to your diet? Ready, set, go. Somebody said rat poison. Eggs, right here.
Oh, thank you.
Sir Jordan Ray. Sir Jordan Ray, R-E-Y. Congratulations, eggs. Healthy eggs. All right, Rome's coming on.
Ooh, I didn't check the settings on that. Hopefully, those. will at least
Yeah,
be
why,
there.
it's probably sit there, yeah. Okay, let's reset Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. Cinnamon you should add. Yeah, that's good. Okay. No, leave it
That's
Instagram.
instant, right?
Come around on this side. You'll be better. We're resetting here, everybody. We'll be back in a second.
Does Twitter
Yep.
save? I mean, Twitter saves it.
It's a
Yeah, you
quesadilla
just
break.
press N.
This portion of the Tai Lopez broadcast is brought to you by Mountain Valley Water, or
There
by
you go.
Quesadillas, or by
Buy quesadilla.
Doing
The quesadilla association.
by
I like that.
avocados.
I like that Ben was part of the
See?
olive oil club.
Yeah, save the camera.
That's a club that's not big where Zach's from in the south.
Exit, that's fine.
No, that yeah.
What's the
Here's what I want to do. Should we tear down should Confederate statues be torn down? Yes or no? That's the title. That's what I'm going to talk about in the next podcast. And then we'll do one more podcast. Let's do a podcast. Let's do the next one actually on money. Then we'll do the last. We'll do it 2-in-1. We'll do a 2-in-1. So we'll have a long title. Let's title this How to Start a Business for Under $1,000. How to start a business for under $100.
Oh, finish YouTube, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did y'all hear the guy that played